It's a hard world to get a break in, and the good things have been taken. But girl, there are ways to make certain things pay. Oh, I'm dressed in these rags, I will sable someday. Hear what I say, I'm gonna ride the serpent. No more time spent sweating rent. Hear my command, I'm breaking loose. It ain't no use me down. Stick around, but baby, remember, it's my life and I'll do what I want. It's my life and I'll think what I want. Show me I'm wrong, have me some time, but someday you'll treat me real fine. Now there'll be women and a fortune who just want to mother orphans. Are you gonna cry when I'm squeezing them dry? Taking all I can get, no regrets. When I openly lie, I love the money. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, citizens of planet Earth and beyond, stretching far into the galaxies, as far as the eye and the imagination can take us. Welcome to the Pork and Bean Show, starring Pork Cunningham and Frank Oliver Beans. We're going to introduce you to new thoughts, put questions in your head, and perhaps have you consider things you've never thought about before. Where the paranormal becomes the normal. Where unreal becomes real. And where love is everything. Fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the ride.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. So getting back to our topic, I agree with you, Kevin, because you're also open-minded. I don't think you're in a box of where you have new discoveries or new ideas or whatever. You consider them. You don't totally eliminate them just because, that's the way you were supposed to.
I take new evidence and I adjust my
barometer.
Yeah. My whole idea of what reality is. And
I think
oh, go ahead.
I think barometer is the wrong word. My astute co-host Frank Oliver Beans, he knows, is barometer the right word in that context? I guess it is in some ways. You're the wordsmith. But anyway, what I wanted to say, my point on that is that anybody who has felt the love and the energy and the purity of the love that the Sasquatch people give us, I defy anybody who's actually felt it on the level that we have to say that comes from a dark source. That's not the laws of the universe. I don't think we can be. If you feel that, you've got to reconsider things if you've actually been touched by that. So anyway, Kev, go ahead and what you're saying.
He was talking about being enveloped in love. And one of the quotes that I said while you were gone was,
well, I've been gone for a while, but that's another story.
When you're empty, was that one sees God as a demon until they're made whole enough to perceive him. And I think that's part of the deal is you have to become whole enough to hold the truth that's in front of you. And that's like we evolved. Who is it? There's a few people who said that, we research Sasquatch and find ourselves.
Amen to that. Oh my gosh.
Well, that's what it's all about. Yeah, if anybody has a true connection with Sasquatch, like I went in, well, I believe I did, wanting, to find out about Sasquatch, what they're all about. I went in respectfully because that's my nature, but I was still trying to figure out, what are they, and you find that out by default. But it's not that long along your road and your journey for those who they're really connecting with it. You find out, wait a minute, this is really about myself and my connection with the universe and with the all connected and whatever. So it's, yeah, that's a whole different ballgame.
So I wanted to talk about the quote that Michael gave. And the context of that was, and I don't know if you caught this before you disappeared. I was talking about I was raised in an atheistic, agnostic household. There was nothing, right? I didn't really have any feelings about God. And when you're in that state, it's easy to dismiss anything supernatural. It just is. And even though my life has been just absolutely peppered with all sorts of weird supernatural events. And yet I didn't acknowledge them as such until after the fact. At 18 years old, actually, I met my wife when I was 17, and she comes from a Christian family. And at 18 years old, and she challenged me, right, in a way that I'd never been challenged before. And I really didn't, before that, I had no real interest in researching Christianity. I'd come to my conclusions and what have you, and that's how I was going to operate. Well, her and her sister, my wife and her sister, really challenged me in ways that I'd never been challenged and made me think about looking at it legitimately for me. And I came to the conclusion that finally, that there was a God, that, well, I'm not going to give the whole gospel here, but bottom line is that Jesus died for our sins and that he's all about love, forgiveness, etc., the whole ball of wax. So I chose at that point, as an adult, really a young adult, to become a Christian. Well, I have to tell you, and this is the part that you missed when you left, I would have expected, the love I felt with the Sasquatch, and like I said, you don't have a place to put that if you haven't experienced it, and there's no way you can describe it with words. I would have expected to have that through my Christian experience, through my exposure to really the Holy Spirit and my exposure to my Creator, etc. And that's not how it happened. It was a very dry place. And I don't know if dry is the right word here, but it spiritually, even though I had words to say around Christianity, hadn't experienced really the depth of love that the Sasquatch gifted me with. I mean, it was a gift. It turned Brian, you know this, it turned my life around in such a profound way. It really made me rethink Christianity. It really made me rethink my view of the cosmology of the world or universe. And I've come to some conclusions that even though I still consider myself fully a Christian, I've got some ideas in my head that my friends would probably consider to be heretical. I admit that. But I don't think that anything I've come to my conclusions over contradicts what I've read in the Bible. And I've read through that Bible many times from beginning to end. Anyway, I don't know what the original context was, but I wanted to really get that out there that my view of my creator. So again, knowing something by its fruit, my view of my creator, I am closer to him than I have ever been. I say him only because it's convenient, by the way. I really think many of you think that it's a feminine. I personally think it's genderless because it's got both feminine and masculine characteristics. But again, that's an opinion that none of us is going to have full knowledge of until we're out of this mortal coil. And even then, I'm not sure. My ideas about love and my ideas, in fact, the joke my daughter told me earlier was I was talking to my wife about the impact Sasquatch had on me, and it really stressed her out. And my daughter was in the room, and I said, it's really all about love. And I had just woken up from a nap. Because of my dementia, my brain gets really tired after about 2-3 hours. And frankly, I don't have a choice in the matter. I will be sitting on the couch and I will shut down. It's like almost like a robot. Switch was thrown. But I woke up from a nap and I'd had a dream, which now I attribute to Sasquatch, by the way, that love, it became clear to me that love is the greatest superpower. And so I have to admit, okay, that's funny. I have to admit that my ideas, well, not that, okay, let me go back. I have to admit that I have had fantasies, or even as an adult, about if I had superpowers, what would I want, right? What would be if I could only choose one, what would be the best one? Well, I think Sasquatch knew that and probably smiled and thought that was funny. And so they talked to me in a way that I would really understand the power of love. And it is the greatest superpower. Well, I told that to my wife and my daughter, and my daughter pipes up. This is my youngest daughter. She's funny.
How old is she?
She's now 19.
Oh, okay. So an adult, basically.
Yeah. She's in college. But she pipes up with, "Dad, have you been eating the brownies?" Thinking,
oh, wow.
Hot brownie. And, I just started laughing so hard, and so did my wife. It kind of broke the tension because she was getting really distressed by the whole thing. And she still doesn't want to talk about it, which is fine. And that's a bridge too far for her at the moment. If Sasquatch wants to meet her, they'll prepare her.
Well, yeah. So your wife, so your daughter's not open to it at all either?
Oh no, my daughter's actually that I have 2 daughters and 1 son. That particular daughter is the most open to it. My son is probably second. And then my eldest she's not as bad as her mom, but I think that that gives her anxiety. The idea that there's a 10-foot tall bipedal, and in her mind, probably just creature, not a being, in the woods stresses her out. Now, her husband, I've shared almost everything with him. And I don't know exactly where he's at on it. He believes in the existence of them, and I've shown him proof that he can't deny. But he and I get along great, and in fact, we're a lot alike in some ways. But I intend to keep bumping him into it. I don't know why I feel led to do this, and hoping someday he'll embrace it and come to the idea. I'm hoping Sasquatch meets him.
Yeah.
But the whole brownie.
Well, did you know that Christ actually quoted something from the Ramayana? And the story, you ever heard of the Ramayana?
No, actually, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of Indian stuff, but the Ramayana is not.
Yeah, the Ramayana was the battle of good and evil, right? And Lord Ram was like the Christ of his day, and he had a brother and a wife, and his brother got messed up with the demon lord's wife, and she loved Ram's brother, and he rejected her because she was a demon, right?
Hmm.
She put a curse on him, and then something happened, and the demon came and poisoned the brother of Ram. Now Ram had the number one devotee, and his number one devotee was a Sasquatch type guy called
Was it
Hanuman.
Hanuman? Yeah,
Hanuman.
Hanuman. I know
And
all about him.
Hanuman was the king of the mountain monkey men, right?
Yep.
And in that story, and in that story, uh, in order to save his lords, right? So in Hanuman, to give the backstory to that, in Hinduism, right, Hanuman is revered and worshipped
Yes.
as the example of how to be devoted to your Lord, whatever your Lord is. So they have all these different Indian lords there in Hinduism, right? So
Hmm.
before you go to your temple, you go to a Hanuman temple to get the blessings of how to be devoted to your Lord. This is very important, right? Hanuman was teaching how to be devoted to your Lord, and then they go to their temple. So after they get his blessing of how to do it, how to be the best devotee, right? So in the story of Hanuman, uh, Lord Ram asked Hanuman, said, the healer came and said, I need a special herb, and it's on this mountain. And then she describes the herb. She says, you have to go to this mountain. And since Hanuman had these special powers, he said, okay. And he flew off to this mountain. He went to the region of the mountain and the certain trees and lakes and mountains and stuff. And he couldn't find the herb. He forgot what the herb was. So what he did was he brought the whole mountain over to Lord Ram so that the healer could pick the herbs off that mountain and save Lord Ram's brother. And Christ actually said, if you have but a grain of the faith of a mustard seed, you could say, mountain, move, and it would move.
Yep.
So this whole thing about the divinity of the Sasquatch people, to me, there's no doubt about it, really, because if you look at Hanuman, right, Hanuman was 56,000 years ago. The official people say it was 7,000 years ago, and that was whatever it was, uh, 5,000 years before Christ, right? So this was a well-known story. So for Christ to quote the story about Hanuman, to me, there's a connection there. And not only that, in terms of the number of people who are devoted to Hanuman as the example of devotion to God, the numbers would actually equal to the sixth largest religion, and the seventh would be Buddhism, just to put it in perspective.
Okay.
That's how many people on this earth. And what goes back to what you're saying, anybody who experiences love and they experience this magic stuff and they have this devotion and stuff, they're calling those people gods. They're calling them archangels. They're calling them the object of worship. They're recognizing that power of divinity, of grace, of the transformation of life. And that's what you have to look at. If your life has changed, that's not chopped liver. That's a
No.
big deal.
Well, and as part of that change, so I've always believed that the way mankind treats the environment is bad. Don't get me wrong. But I was not what you would call a tree hugger. I was not overtly green, if you will. But it still pissed me off when people would litter and not take care of things, right? My experiences with Sasquatch have given me an entirely new and much deeper connection to the natural and I've always loved nature. Don't get me wrong, but I actually have hugged trees and I've blessed trees and given them, well, actually, out from my heart, as part of the meditation you talk about, Michael, my heart love to these trees as best as I can. I don't know if it really is happening or not, but I'm trying. That's part of the change they have wrought in me, is just this amazing appreciation for the creation and what I call the creation, and how disgusted I am by the way humanity treats it, including, so like I said, I live within literally thousands and thousands of acres of managed forest. Well, when those trees are ready to harvest, they go in and they clear cut and leave this big old gaping, in my opinion, wound on the land. Any Sasquatch structures that were there are destroyed. It's just unconscionable. And it just bothers me to no end. So again, I just have an entirely new appreciation.
I wanted to make a point with what Frank Beans just said. So the Hanuman was he was worshipped by people, and I do know that, but it was the seventh biggest religion in the world.
Sixth.
Okay, well, neither
Well, right now, that's not considered a religion. It's
no,
considered like a saint or something. It's
but isn't it interesting that now we are being taught by Sasquatch or whatever things of a spiritual nature and whatever, and it's kind of like the same thing. It's kind of weird, it's the monkey men of the mountains that have wisdom in our teachers, and people worship them, whatever. And now we're having, and I'm not saying to worship the Sasquatch, but it's interesting
it was during a war between good and evil, and
right,
kind of
and
the flavor of good and evil going on out there in the world right now.
Oh, there was a isn't that interesting?
A war between good and evil. It was the evil demons, and Hanuman was a big player in making it. They also had flying saucers back then.
Yep.
Isn't that interesting? Because we're kind of in a cesspool right now, and look who's coming back talking to us.
They actually said in one of the Sasquatch messages of humanity, it's the same evil lords that were happening back there at the time of Hanuman, which was for the people who were in the spiritual kind of thing. That was the war in Lemuria.
See, I think I'm not going to get into Jesus Christ and some of that stuff too much. I believe in Christ. I don't necessarily believe the story as it's presented, but what I am saying is I do believe there is a lot more somebody with an open mind to experience and to learn. I don't think it's so. I think that's very respectful, and that's actually what I believe.
Absolutely.
Well, the other thing that to connect the Sasquatch people to Jesus and Christianity is Sasquatch. One of the main messages to me and to anybody who's been there around there much is that they're really big on we're all one. We're all one, and the way they taught me was this: we're all. It's all about the all one and no space. And what the all one means is this: I and my Father are one, and I and my brother are one. And this has got to be the core teaching of Christ, right? I and my Father are one. I and my brother are one. And that's what, if you stick around long enough, then that's what they're giving you. They're saying, you and I are one. We are family. We are, and they can read your mind. The only way you can read somebody's mind is if you are complete enmeshed. You are one with them at that moment. And that's it. Didn't Christ also say the Father is
in each and every one of us. The kingdom of God is in
Right.
each and every one. Kevin,
Right.
is that true?
Right.
Yes, the kingdom of God is here, is what he said.
Well,
And
but
he didn't
okay.
say in each one of us.
He said the kingdom
But-
of heaven is within.
Right. And
Is
I just
here.
wanted to correct you just a little bit. Actually, no, I don't, because I lost my train of thought. Sorry. It happens a lot.
That's not a coincidence. I'm just joking.
No, that's fine.
No, I'm just joking. So anyway, continue. Let's get along with check your little list there. And what else did you have for us?
Well, we were talking about supernatural aspects of Sasquatch, and talked about the love envelope. But there are other ways that they have made their presence known to me on the trail, and it was at different places, and it was through. Okay, so I just want to preface this with I don't really have a sense of smell at all, but they announced their presence to me with, well, actually one female in particular. She told me to call her Talitha. I'm not sure whether that's her real name or just something that's convenient for me because it's easy to pronounce. It is what it is. But she adopted me more closely than anyone else in the clan and interacted with me on an amazing level. And she's the one that I got the deepest loving envelope that I could possibly imagine. But she also interacted with me. She announced her presence with this most intoxicating floral aroma you could ever possibly imagine.
I can imagine it.
Yeah,
because Roger
right.
says the same thing. Like I described it as a floral perfume, like a flower. Yeah, right.
I describe it as it's not perfume at all. It is a spiritual transmission. There's no smell there.
Yeah, I mean, what it is
they're giving you the heavenly smell, but there's no smell there. It is a spiritual transmission. Because I've experienced that from a guru one time.
You know what's really interesting? This could be a very good point. And sorry, Kevin, because I want you to continue on your point. But the first time I smelt that floral fragrance that Raj gave me or whatever, I was with Randy Brisson, who's kind of like my mentor and a very First Nations guy, with the first guy I went into the woods with, and another fellow. And I smelt it, and it was so strong that my eyes were watering, my throat was sore, and my everything, my nose was burning, everything.
Wow.
And yet Randy Brisson didn't hardly smelt it at all, or maybe not at all. Well, he smelt it maybe a little bit, and the other guy didn't smell it at all. So that's a very important point.
Oh, absolutely. So, my sinuses, and this is not TMI. This actually is bearing on that story. My sinuses are always plugged, and so when I'm on the trail breathing hard, my mouth is open, and I'm breathing through that. Very little air goes through my nose. And this goes along with what Michael was saying. It's a spiritual thing, but literally in the back of my throat, kind of, but more up towards the sinuses, that's where I sense her first, and it's like a full feeling, and then all of a sudden I'll force the air through my nose, and that's when I'll notice that it's the floral aroma. So it's always announced with kind of an energy back in my head, right behind the membrane of the back of my throat up high. It's not in my sinuses. It's that's the best I can describe it. And it's actually really comforting to me now.
Yeah.
That's different.
You want to know what that is?
What?
I get to tie it back to the Bible. If you feel with your tongue that soft palate in the back, right, and you can move your tongue far back, and it gets to like the end of that flap. Well, above there, babies are born with their tongue up above there, with their tongue going up, right? That is one of the energy centers from your third eye.
Your pineal gland.
Your pineal gland, right? But there's a connection there. If you can get your tongue back there, it's actually a meditation technique. And what it is called nectar. It's called the nectar. But what Christ called, it's also the water of life. When Christ talks about the water of life, he's talking about a meditation technique. When you stick your tongue back there, you can drink from the water of life, and but it's also called nectar because it is like the nectar of a flower. It has a bouquet. It has a sweetness to it.
Mm.
So it's also kind of magical because it's not really. It is a spiritual experience that excretes a gland inside you. It's not it's not like a sweat gland or something. You have to have a spiritual presence to have that. You have to be in a higher state or concentrated state. So, I'm an old time meditator from way back, and when you experience that, that's like holy shit. And it's the same thing. Same thing. They have tinnitus in your ear. There's a inside. If you can follow that stuff, it goes to the music of the spheres.
Mm.
Now, didn't you say, Kevin, that you moving along here, you that same fragrance you encountered in a human that you met along in your area, right?
Yeah, we're
Tell
going
us
to
that.
we're going to get to that. I'm not going to talk about that right this second because
Okay.
I have one more thing I want to talk about.
Okay.
And this is one that surprised me probably the most. And which, this is a surprising, really unbelievable topic to begin with. So this for me was even more earth-shattering, and that is enhanced psychic abilities since my interaction with Sasquatch.
Since your interaction.
Huh?
You said you've evolved them or you've gained them from your interaction.
Yes. What I'm saying is I may have experienced, not may have, I experienced them on occasion before, but they were accidental. So foreknowledge of events or telepathy or let's see, those are two of them that are really stand out to me. And the foreknowledge of events or events, I guess it's really just events. So for example, if I'm playing cards on the computer, and this is going to sound weird, but I'm all about statistics and probability, and I count cards. And so I play the game of hearts very frequently on my computer because I enjoy it. And before the computer flips over the next card, I can 9 times out of 10 tell you what suit it's going to be. Not necessarily what number it's going to be, and it's not from me having a knowledge of probability or counting the cards in that case, because I wouldn't know which exact card they were going to throw. But 9 times out of 10, that just information will pop into my head. Oh, diamonds. Oh, clubs. Oh, whatever. And that's new, right? So when I was depressed, I was playing cards a lot. That never happened. The other thing that has happened is I'll be driving and I will know what and people are going to dismiss this one probably, but I will know for a fact when someone's going to go to the same place I am. For example, on my way to the post office, long before I get to the only road that leads to the post office, there are multiple turnoffs. I will absolutely have a knowing that that person's going to the post office. And actually, I'm almost 100% on that one. And the pharmacy, for example, because I have a lot of meds I have to take. Literally, for 15 miles, I followed this person right to the exact same pharmacy. In fact, they got to the pharmacy before me in line. So I stood behind them in the line inside the store.
Yeah, there's no doubt that they enhance our abilities. Absolutely no doubt. But, have you taken your skills to Vegas? I mean, hey, if you know what color card's going to come up, especially, isn't there a game where it's black and white? Black and red?
I don't know. I don't gamble.
I don't know. Well, hey, I suggest that you maybe take it up.
I don't anticipate that that's what they want me to use it for.
No, they would probably, it's probably taking advantage of it, but it just popped into my head. But
yeah, right.
Just kind of like it funny, but they definitely enhance our abilities. Yeah, because from my understanding is that all the abilities that they have, we had at one time.
Right.
Yeah. So
now. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So they're reintroducing them to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So now I want to talk about really their unbelievable abilities, things that have stretched the whole boundaries of
Your parameters.
and what's possible and what's not, and really made me question my perception of reality in a major way. So as you alluded to, I was on the trail. Actually, I had been absent from the trail for about a month. Things had gotten busy. I was doing some work around the house. And this was last year, I believe. Was this last year, Brian? Do you remember? I think it was last year.
What story are you talking about?
The human.
Yes, last year.
Okay. So I'm walking on the trail and I used this trail for exercise in addition to interacting with my clan. And so I go up and down this trail multiple times, anywhere between 6 to 9 miles. So that's either 2 times or 3 times in and back out. So my first trip in, I get to the lake and then I start coming back out and I have to cross a stream that comes out of the lake. And all of a sudden, out of the woods comes, I don't remember whether it was the dog or the child now. It was the child. There was a child of about 4, maybe 5, comes out of the woods. Looks like his hair's never been cut. And he's dressed very simply, and and I just felt there's something wrong here, right? Because he was alone. There was no one behind him at this point. And I look at this child and I'm about to say something, but then I see his eyes and he is freaked out. This kid is like looking at me like, what is this guy going to do? And then and so that was the first thing. And I'm still probably about 10 feet in front of this kid and he never stops walking, right? And then out comes this dog. And I have an affinity for dogs. And dogs have an affinity for me. There's like a love relationship, and it's a very rare dog that ignores me. This dog did not give me the time of day. And it was a little dog. It wasn't a big dog, and he didn't have a collar on. He wasn't on a leash, and I fortunately hadn't brought my dog. So he comes trotting out, and he just keeps going. He looked at me. And he had the same kind of expression on his face as the kid, like, wide-eyed, like, oh my gosh. And then out comes so they walk past me and I do not see a parent yet. And then a woman walks out of the woods. And something inside me said, oh my gosh. I was on high alert. There's energy going on here that I don't understand. In fact, it was really disconcerting. And as she's walking towards me, we don't say anything to each other. Actually, we might have at that point, but we didn't really say anything to each other beyond, hi, hey, how you enjoying the hike kind of a thing, just pleasantries. And as I walked by her, I got really a whiff of Talitha. I mean, it was her scent, but it was really faint at that point. And I stopped because, like I said, I have no sense of smell. But this is a human as far as I'm concerned. I'm thinking, well, is there an actual perfume? And so I'm running through all the options in my mind. Is this a perfume? Is it, what is this? And I kind of dismiss it a little bit because then out from the woods comes a very large man. He's not, as big as a Sasquatch I would see a Sasquatch, I think. But he's a very stocky, well-built man, probably in his late 20s. That's how he appeared. He was wearing a hat, and all of his clothing was, again, very simple. And same with her clothing, by the way. It's not actually what you would see normally on the trail today. And so he's got a hat on. And again, it's a hat that's not the kind that's in style. And he walks by me and he doesn't even look at me. And I'm looking at him. And okay, I thought to myself, well, that was really odd. And so, but I continue walking because I'm in workout mode. I'm trying to get my heart rate up and and lose weight and all that fun stuff and be in shape for the bigger hiking trip I usually take in the late summer. So I continue trucking on up to the top of the trail. And so I have to climb out of this lake basin. And it's probably a good 600 feet. And it's a very steep, short trail in that section. And I get to the top. I'm tired. I turn around and I come back. And I'm thinking, and all this time I've got in my head this family that I encountered. And as I get to the lake, right before I get to the lake on the trail, in exactly the same order, they're coming up the trail. Actually, no, the dog was first and the kid was second this time. And again, the dog doesn't give me the time of day. The kid walks right by me and actually doesn't even look at me this time, right? Even though I had given pleasantries with his mom and all that fun stuff, there was no, and kids actually generally like me. Then the mom comes up and I'm wearing a shirt that says Dr. Pepper on it. And she goes, "Oh, Dr. Pepper, I love that." And then she keeps walking and all of a sudden I am overwhelmed by the smell of Talitha. I mean, just absolutely 100%. And I'm confused. You have no idea the confusion this caused in my brain, because there was some cognitive dissonance going on that, how could this be, right? And then the male comes up, and I swear to you, he growled at me as he walked by. I swear to you that happened.
Well, maybe he didn't like your relationship with his lady.
I'm pretty sure that was the case. And so I continue walking, and I'm no longer walking in workout mode. I am in stunned shock because I cannot make sense of this at all. This is so far outside my paradigm. My energy, my perception of the energies was not meeting what my eyes were seeing. And I'm thinking to myself, could this be true? What could this be? And so I immediately come back up the trail. And again, I'm not in workout. Oh, by the way, I should have caught up with this family because I was moving fast enough. And they were sauntering, right? They disappeared. They were gone. I did not meet them again on that trail, which is odd, very odd.
Yeah.
Because there's only one way in and one way out. So I head up, come home, and the minute Brian gets online, I said, "You will never believe the experience I had today." And I tell him it, and he's at first really skeptical. And I don't blame him, because I was skeptical.
I don't think I was I?
You were totally skeptical. You were saying, "I don't know." And that's okay. I get it. But over time, as I'm telling you the story and I'm giving you the corroborating points where, goodness sakes, this was Talitha, right? This was not just any person. This was Talitha. She appeared to me in human form. Now, I know that anybody who's listening to this is going to go, "Oh, gosh, you are so far out there." But honestly, there is no other conclusion I can come to, because I had something corroborate that the next day. Or no, the day after.
Okay. Go ahead.
I came back through the trail, and on the way back out, in another area where I know they hang out, this young lady appeared. She was probably 19, 20 years old, and she had two dogs with her. One of them was probably the most magnificent dog I'd ever seen in its presence. You know how when you meet an animal or a person, some animals and some people just have this presence about them that is almost royal. It's just, well, there was two dogs, and I think the second dog was the same as the first dog I saw the day before. The second dog was not. This dog was special. He was like an Australian Shepherd type dog, absolutely magnificent, royal. And he's not a big dog, right? But his presence, or its presence, was so amazing that I couldn't help but say to the young lady, "Your dog is magnificent. He is amazing." And she said, "Thank you." And her voice was all musical, and it was actually pretty magical. And as I'm walking away, I realized that I'm going to come back down that trail one more time, she's a lone woman and I don't want her to feel all freaked out. And I expected to encounter her again. And so I said to her, okay, and we had already passed each other. So we turned to look at each other, and I'm getting that same energy signals as I got before, but it's not Talitha. This is a different thing. And I say to her, I use this trail for exercise and I'm going to come through one more time. I just wanted to give you that heads up so you didn't think I was some sort of weird, creepy person who was stalking you. And she started to giggle and she said, oh, you're fine. Just like that. She turned and walked, right? And then I went back to the top of the trail. And again, there's one way in and one way out.
Yeah.
She never appeared again. She was gone. I can only surmise, and actually I had a reading with Gail Fowler and found out some more details about that event. Not just the young lady, but also the Talitha, who admitted that it was her, and she had a good laugh over it because she said the look on my face was really funny.
I don't actually remember my skepticism, because the reason I'm saying that is because I've experienced them in the form of animals and humans many times. So maybe what was I skeptical about?
Okay. So one of the things I really appreciate you, Brian, is you've always kept me grounded and not running too far ahead of myself, coming to conclusions that maybe aren't warranted. And so you ask me a lot of clarifying questions that you put through your own filters. And sometimes you've cried BS and I've had to rethink my ideas. And on this one, I remember you asking me the clarifying questions, and I felt like you were being skeptical up front. Maybe you weren't. Maybe you were just doing your role of, Kevin, think this through. And by the end of it, what you said was, because I just talked about the aroma, the fragrance that came off of this woman. And he said, well, there's your corroborating information. That's your proof.
Mm-hmm.
This was Talitha. And this was before I had the reading with Gail. So for all you guys that are out there who are listening that are skeptical, I'm here to tell you that was probably the strangest experience I've ever had in my life.
And I'm here to tell you that it was a legitimate experience, because I've experienced very similar things. I mean, but it's a very far-fetched or far stretch for people who have no experience in at all in this to, it just seems like lunacy. But
there's several ways that could happen too. I mean, the ETs can do it, and the Sasquatch can do it. They can either literally transform their body, or they can give you a scream.
Well, that's just that's what
I think. I mean, I'll just give you one really, really quick one, because I want to get into the story about the one watch with four glyph. Remember that?
I do remember.
Well, I want to maybe end on that, but I'll give you a real quick one. I remember my friend and myself, and actually Randy B, or Randy Barnes, the young fella,
yeah.
I'm my only fan. There's the only fan that I've ever met.
Well, he's a big fan of the Pork and Bean Show. Actually, Pork and Bean Show is, I don't know, I mean, it's getting bigger than our britches. Basically, I mean, we're pretty much a household name now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting bigger than our slander.
Yeah, it's turned from a farce to a circus, But anyway, I remember one time being in the woods in a trail, and we're all walking up the trail. We're young guys. Well, I'm young for my age, and we're walking up, and we see these people behind us. These like 80-year-olds, and they're like running up the hill basically with no water, no pack, and they're just like going up effortlessly. And even Randy Barnes is like 30-something, could not keep up, and the one guy didn't say anything to it. He was weird. The lady was very aloof too, and she just said they were going around the entire 20-mile circuit or something, and it was like, lady, you're 80 years old, you've got no backpack, you've got no water, and you're making us look like chumps on this hill. What's going on? You know, and that was that kind of stuff, right? So,
Yep.
and that's not one of the better ones that I can say, but it was fun, you know. But so anyway, I remember I showed you a very, very special glyph that I got. One of the most special that I've ever got. The one watch with the four rocks. Do you remember? There was my rock, and then there was the Sasquatch foot that was just like so obvious.
Yes.
And then the four rocks in a circle, right? Representing that I thought was the clan. And it was another one of those glyphs that I knew the meaning of immediately, right? And so I'm showing it to you. And I remember you said, you know, it's a circle, don't you? And the circle is huge to them. You know, the
right.
four rocks, the four representing them were in a circle, right? And you said, you know, it's a circle, don't you? And I thought, what? Why didn't I think of that? You know, like it's like, you know, but then you can carry on. You started having experiences with the circle and stuff like that, right?
Right. So next to the apple trees that they stole all the apples from, I hate to say stole, because actually I was happy they took them. My wife's the one who was upset. But next to that is a stump left over from a fir tree that they'd cut down before they built my house.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to leave me little messages on that stump, glyphs, or in this case, they created a circle on that glyph, and it showed, and these stones were of different sizes. And there were 6 or 7, I don't remember the exact number of stones, so it's an estimate at this point. It was 6 or 7 stones in the circle. And this was right about the exact same time Brian was experiencing his circle glyph. And outside of the circle was 1 stone. Actually, no, there were 2 stones outside of the circle. And they were of different sizes, but mostly they were smaller than, these 2 stones were smaller than the stones that made up the circle. Mm-hmm. I didn't take a picture, you know, dumb. So I didn't preserve it, but I was stupid. I didn't leave it either. I adjusted it, and I put the 2 stones that were outside the circle into the circle. And then I added a couple of stones just to see, you know, what would happen. And then over time, so they adjusted it, I adjusted it, they adjusted it, they added sticks, you know, it became a back and forth.
But do you remember we were thinking, go ahead.
I said, then you and I talked about it. You and I talked about it, Brian. And you asked me some specifics about what the circle looked like. And I realized that we had changed it so much, I didn't remember enough of the details, because you asked some very specific questions. And I went outside that night and I asked them if they'd be willing to remake the circle so that I could understand it. They didn't, but that's where that was.
Well, you don't do everything. But, you know, I remember that, you know, I was saying my meaning for the circle was all one and all connected. And I think that you were trying to wrap your head around that, whether you believe that or not. And maybe they left you the circle to confirm, to try to give you the message that, yeah, maybe that was the meaning. And, you know, I'm thinking maybe the 7 rocks in that circle probably represented the, you know, like mine did with the 4. Because I'm connected to 4 that I know. Maybe that was 7 members of your clan or whatever that, you know. And I was going to say the rocks outside are maybe you.
Well, that's what I thought.
And, you know, and maybe they were inviting you into the circle.
Because honestly, you guys, I hope so, because they've adopted me.
Absolutely, they have.
Yeah.
And
so
you know,
go ahead.
And the other interesting thing is that every time we were talking and whatever about stuff like that on that particular incident, and other times we could very often feel Talitha's energy coming in. You know, like I could feel her, and I know the softer feminine energy of the Sasquatch, much like Raj is saying. I felt that, and you know, she was listening in and seemed very approving as well too. So.
Well, absolutely. And there's a funny story around that. You and I were talking once. I don't know if you remember this, and I said, I didn't think Talitha was there because I didn't feel her. And then all of a sudden on the sliding glass door that was literally a foot from me, there was a wham. Like, I'm here, dummy.
Yeah,
'Cause
absolutely.
they come up and slap my house on occasion.
Yeah.
Can I ask
Okay.
a question?
Yes, please
Hey,
do.
Kevin, I was thinking about your house, and you're living out in the woods, and what was leading up to you getting that house? What was going on before you got that house, and then what led to getting that house?
Interestingly enough, and I don't want to get into too much, but basically my family was kind of in crisis. There were some things going on in my life that had really bled over into my family life. They all, it was done very publicly, and they all knew, and some of them shunned us. And so we wanted a fresh start. And actually this plays into one of the dreams the Sasquatch gave me. And I know it was Sasquatch now, even though at the time I didn't know anything about them. I dreamt I was driving across a bridge with the entire family. We were in our minivan, and all of a sudden the bridge started to buck and shake, and the van was going into the air, and it was a really rough ride, really rough. And then we get towards the end of the bridge, and the bridge bucks one last time and throws the van into the air, and we land really hard on the other side, which was interesting. And then I looked over at my wife at the time in the car, in the dream, and I said, we're going to be okay. Turns out where we moved is across the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, which is a very long suspension bridge. And back in the day, the original bridge was called Galloping Gertie, because when the wind blew at a certain rate, it hit one of the harmonics of the bridge and it would actually buck. And in fact, it destroyed itself, actually. They used that imagery to say, you're coming here and you're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It was a rough ride. I ended up here because I think I was led here. When I first drove up to this house, before I even walked in, I said, I'm home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually like the house that much. It's not my style, but the energy, the location, the peacefulness, it all came together for me. And after I'd been here for 6 months, I'd realized how stressed out I was, because I lived in a cul-de-sac before on a postage stamp sized lot. The idea, and neighbors, they look in your backyard from their upstairs, and you had no privacy. And like I said, everybody knew everybody's business. Out here, it's not like that. My closest neighbor is, I don't know, 500 feet away, which is not close.
To me, when you have the kind of transformation and connection that you have, that getting in your house, that's why I asked the question, getting in your house away, move to a new location, that had to be part of it. That means to me, there was some connection, there was some grace, there was some guidance, there was some changes that need to be made in your life. And on a very practical level, I see I've heard stories and feel stories of Sasquatch doing that. It's just poking you to make change, poking your feelings and pushing your, urging you,
I don't think there's any doubt about that from the description of your dream and how it worked out for you. It's but you've got to, but they can work with you, Kevin, because you've got an open mind and you're open to, you're open to new ideas. You're not a closed person. So.
No, most definitely not.
So did you have anything, did you want to,
can I talk about one last thing? So Talitha pulled back from our relationship, and I think it's because she had a baby in January and she's got other stuff going on. But
absolutely, that's it.
It's very rare that I ever have any interaction with her anymore. And I have to tell you, I really miss it. I feel like there's a hole in my life without that interaction. Go ahead.
Can I say one quick thing?
Yeah.
Ross is saying my female had twins. Now she was my main kid. She was my first connection, right?
Right.
You know, she was the one who gave me the love zap. She was the one who gave me the fragrance or whatever. But once she had her family, she was far too busy to devote the time necessary to my education and bringing me up. And that's when Ari took over. And I remember when he first took over, like I could feel her energy was very feminine, very soft. And, you know, and then when Ari came in, it was like, back off, dude. Like, it was just, whoa, this guy's a powerhouse. And you know what? He did immediately. He did immediately. Like, as soon as I said it, he toned it down. But my point is that, yeah, Talisha is not abandoning you or whatever. She's just she's busy. She's busy. Yeah. So she's got a family, yeah.
So Talitha pulled back, and then a male energy came in. But because some of my past history with well, basically my dad, is I've never trusted male energy. I've never trusted men because a lot of pain and anguish came from my dad. So this male energy is coming in. I don't really have a place to put it. I know how to interact with female energy because, you know, my mom, that was a pretty positive experience. But so this male energy is coming in, and he kept trying to connect, and I would try to connect back. In the absence of that energy, they were still interacting with me in the form of glyphs and in the form of well, basically it culminated in what happened in February. So in February 22nd, to be clear, I went down to the woods and I went off to an area where I sit and meditate frequently because their special energy is there, and it's amazing. Well, I get there and I'm not going to meditate there because it's wet, right? The rain is it's, you know, it's February in the Northwest. That's the way it is. So anyway, I go in there and I just to check things out, see if they left any glyphs, just whatever. And I notice on one of the trees near where I sit, a blaze mark, you know, someone had, you know, not really claws necessarily, although the fingernails were sharp, and just slashed some of the bark off. It didn't go deep enough to actually injure the tree. It just removed the bark, and it was fresh. I mean, and we're talking fresh because the rest of the bark was faded and weathered, and that was super dark and just happened. It was this, and it was on a cedar tree. And when cedar bark is wet, it easily gets left a mark in. And I was a little bit taken aback because I thought, well, hold it. When I'm in their area, I'm protected and I feel that way. But what if this is a bear telling me to stay out? What if this is a cougar? And interestingly, I started to look around. I thought, well, maybe they marked another tree. Maybe I can get a better look at it. And I started finding these blazes all over this area. And this is new. This is completely new. The last time I'd been to this area was probably a week prior. And so I started to film because of this, again, this was new. And because I wanted to look at this more closely later. And then I started to get the idea that Sasquatch had done this. But then I had ideas that it wasn't, you know, I was confused. I couldn't figure it out because the blaze marks were all done very low. So a 10-foot tall Sasquatch would not have made them that low. As far as, I mean, if they were making it for a territorial marker that they weren't happy with me. This was done so a person my size could see it. And so I'm going from tree to tree and I'm sort of putting things together. And then I come across this one tree where they had created a symbol language or had written a symbol language. They'd etched it in. And that floored me. And now we're going to talk about, this was a major paradigm shift for me. Not only was it glyphs, this was actual, like a sentence. but all in one set of or all in one set of engraved symbols.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought that was all there was. And I thought, and I was grateful for it. Don't get me wrong. I was absolutely amazed. Well, I start to walk back to the main trail, and there's a kind of a rotten stump that I have to walk on so I don't walk through some marshy, gross area. And right next to that is a series of 3 trees. The first tree, which is a big, I mean, these are big trees. This is like second growth, not old growth, but it's second growth. And there was a blaze mark on that tree, which got my attention because I'd missed it entirely on the way in. So it occurred to me that at that point, this was all done on cedar trees. And the third tree in this line of trees was a fir tree. And it's huge, and it's got gnarled bark, and it's thick, and it would be hard to make any sort of a mark in it really that didn't injure the tree. And so I thought, well, I wonder if they made one in that and how they would do it. So I walk up to the tree, and there was a picture I put on Facebook of this, and there's a stick leaning up and pointing directly at a place in the tree where they had put a little fishing bobber. So that
Yeah.
what they gifted me, almost like, hey, well done. You know, you figured it out.
You solved the riddle.
I solved the riddle.
And wait a minute, and just I want to make one very important point. When you had the thought, I wonder if they did something with, what was the other kind of tree? What was it, an oak tree?
No, it was a fir tree.
Okay, a different tree though.
A Douglas tree.
As soon as you were having that thought, that's when you were right there, right? Right at that place. Okay,
right at that.
Makes sense, yeah.
So I was so excited that I went back and I started to take video. Well, I did something I normally wouldn't do. I walked all the way down to where the water's edge was, because the creek that leaves the main lake where all the fish are empties out into what was turned into a beaver lake, because beavers created a dam at the far end of it, and is actually bigger than the lake that is the real lake. But anyway, I walked down to the water, which is still the creek, and I started to film. There's no such thing as film anymore. I started to video out from the beaver lake, and I covered about a 270-degree arc coming back up the trail to where the blazes were. And I took probably 4 or 5 different video snippets that I knew that I was going to stitch together into a bigger video, which I put on my YouTube channel. When I was putting them together into a single video, just a note, with those video clips, without fail, it's always the first image or the first frame of the video is used as the thumbnail. Well, this one video clip, it was literally, I think it was like the 13th frame or 14th frame was showing, and that's where I saw a face. It wasn't actually the Sasquatch, but it was a face. And that's what caused me to look more deeply at that little clip. And again, I put that clip on Facebook or on YouTube as well. And I did a frame-by-frame analysis of it where I zoomed in, and I was floored. One of the male Sasquatches allowed me to videotape him or video him. And not only just videotape or video him and see him, but video him and see some seriously high weirdness that I almost look at it as 3 different scenarios, and it lasted literally 3 seconds. So if you count 1001, 1002, 1003, that's it, and it was over. Well, I extracted 70 plus frames out of that, and one set of frames, the first set of frames, he looked, I don't know why, he looked surprised, and then he looked irritated in the second, for the second. Yeah. And then in the third second, he said, I'm out of here. And his pineal gland region started to discolor, and it spread. And as it spread, his image started to distort.
Wow.
And then he distorted down, almost in a swirl, distorted down to nothing. And there seemed to be 2 other entities or beings in that video segment. one he was holding up, or it was up near his face, kind of obscuring half of it. And the other showed up as he was leaving the scene. Anyway, that was a life-changing event for me, because that's when I started to wonder, well, that's when I came to the conclusion that we're not the apex people on this planet. We're not the apex being.
Mm-hmm.
They are, because we can't do that. They can come into my house anytime they want. They can go anywhere they want. We would never know it. They can uncloak. And I mean, I had intellectually come to the conclusion they cloak, right? But I saw it with my own eyes in video form.
Yeah, sounds like you were seeing him in the third sequence dematerialize or whatever.
Yeah, he dematerialized. And it turns out, actually, where he dematerialized, I went and I looked at that area, and he was behind some really tall brush. Turns out that brush is about 14 feet tall, because I had my son-in-law go, and he's about 6 feet, and he took my walking stick and we tied a red flag to it. And my walking stick's about 12 feet. And you could just see that red flag from where I stood and filmed. So either he's 12 foot tall or he can levitate. I'm not sure which. Or 14 foot tall. I mean, he's somewhere in that range.
Could be both. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, so
I hope you give Brian that 3-second clip, because then yeah, so that he can add that into right where we're talking now.
I can add some pictures and stuff for sure.
So I've given that to Brian, and Brian's not able to see it for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, it's not for me, maybe. It's not, a lot of people show me pictures. I seldom see anything in them,
right,
unless it's for me.
Right.
I mean, it's just because they connect with people differently, right? I mean, but if they.
I totally understand. I agree. And so that's on my YouTube channel as well. In fact, Michael, I'll send you the link if you want to look at it, because I don't know, it was life-changing for me.
Yeah, it's life-changing.
Well, it's for you.
Yeah.
That's all that counts. If it's life-changing for you, that's the mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Like I said, sometimes they will only show you what they want you to see, and others can't see it.
Yeah.
So you don't be disappointed. Just be happy.
I'm floored with what they showed me. That they gifted me with such a special knowledge of their abilities.
But it's rare.
No, I mean, don't be disappointed that other people can't sometimes see it.
I just want to share it sometimes, though.
I know. No, I know.
I want to see it.
Of course. So what about your open heart surgery?
Last time me and Brian were talking about, I was talking about my friend Barry Webster, and he's like a real religious guy, and he goes out and takes a troop of people and they pray in the woods, and then they talk to the Sasquatch, and they've been doing this for like 15 or 20 years. And one time he set up a deal where he had the intention of shaking hands with the Sasquatch people. And there's one 10-foot Sasquatch guy shows up, and he shows up with the what do you call it, the shimmer, the
predator mode,
the predator shimmer, and so there was like, it's real awkward, and this guy's kind of not like a big talker. He's just looking at him, and then the Sasquatch actually stuck his hand out there to shake his hand, and it was real awkward, and then he walked away. But there was 8 people there watching, or 7 people there watched him do that, and they could see the outline of the Sasquatch by like the shimmer, and it was at night. But yeah, that's life-changing stuff, and to have the grace to be able to see them go invisible, that's something. Brian's seen him go invisible 4 or 5 different kind of ways. So yeah,
it's amazing.
It's a real deal. If it just happened and it was just you, but it was too many times, too many people that it happens to.
Yes.
That invisibility, or that glimpse into another reality.
Absolutely. It's not something that we can, well, actually, we don't really have a place to put it in terms of our perceptions. It's like, wow, that just happened. What? That is so far outside my normal day-to-day experience that, not sure where that goes. And that could create all sorts of cognitive dissonance for someone who's not open-minded. It's like, I didn't really just see that.
So
well,
Kevin,
if we ever learn that ability, it'll be the end of politics.
oh yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. So Kevin, you just recently had open heart surgery, and you had an amazing experience there.
Oh yeah. In fact, it was another life-changing experience.
Let's hear that. You can give us the whole spiel.
So on April 18th, actually it was 4 days before April 18th, I started feeling chest pains while I was out working in my yard. I thought it was asthma because the pollen count was super high. And I was doing some really strenuous work. And on April 18th, I woke up in the middle of the night and with chest pain. And I knew that I needed to get to the hospital. And it's a good thing I did, otherwise I'd be dead. Because apparently the blockage that was in my heart is called the widowmaker by cardiologists. So
Don't sound good.
No, it wasn't. April 22nd, I go into the hospital, and the hospital I went into didn't have the equipment to actually perform the diagnostics that they needed to perform. And so you have to know that I'm scared at this point, because this is literally my worst fear. One of my worst fears come to life. I watched my dad and my grandfather go through this. And in my opinion, neither of them was ever the same. They were ruined. They physically were, they never came back from the trauma. And that's something I can't accept. And so I'm pushing myself pretty hard to do that, but
You're doing good, man. You're looking good. You're looking good.
Thank you. So they do the angiogram on me and they discover the blockage. And apparently I've had this blockage for quite some time, because corollary blood vessels have grown around the blockage, they were handling the flow until one of the plaques ruptured that's in there. And my body started trying to create a clot to cover that rupture. So 5 days later, April 22nd, I had open heart surgery, and I was scared. I was so scared. And because I was scared.
I told you were going to be okay, though. Remember?
What?
I told you were going to be okay. What were you scared about?
Yeah, well, they killed me on the table. They stop your heart, and there's no guarantee it's going to start again. Okay. Anyway, because I was scared, I asked my SASQUATCH clan to take care of me while I was under sedation. And I have a very strong memory of being surrounded by beings of light. And I was enveloped in this incredible peace and love. And this was I don't know how close I was to coming. You lose all sense of time when you're under sedation. And they then released me to my waking up experience and to whatever else I was going to do. But when I woke up, that peace and that love was still with me. And that was all well and good. So a couple of days later, about a week later, 5 days later, I was sent home for home care because I'd gotten well enough that, I didn't need to be in ICU anymore. And I then took a turn for the worse and got pneumonia and found out my lung had partially collapsed from the surgery, and that I was having a really hard time. My body was having a really hard time reinflating the lung and clearing the pneumonia, even though I was doing my breathing exercises. And I'd spiked a temperature. It was 102 degrees and it was going up. So they readmitted me to the hospital, which was not something I wanted because, this COVID-19 thing, they don't let anybody visit you. So I was in the hospital again for another 5 or 6 days. And so I'd spent 15 days in the hospital, and I was alone. Fortunately I was able to use the Facebook video calling thing with my wife and my family and Brian. Actually, I showed Brian my scar before it was really a scar.
I'm one of the privileged ones.
Yes.
Your family. Was it this April, right? This April?
Yep, this April.
Oh,
And-
man. That was like right around the corner.
Yeah. And so about 3 days into my stay at the hospital the second time,
That's
made
Go ahead.
yeah,
made in 1954, man.
that's right, baby.
You got it.
About 3 days after I was in, 2 days after I was in the hospital, again, I was at a very low point emotionally because they were pumping me full of antibiotics. They were, I mean, it was just really demoralizing. And I got up from my bed because this hospital I was at was not the hospital I had the surgery at. It was the hospital that's closer to my house. And it's surrounded by woods. And I just got the idea I needed to go to the window and look out at the woods. And what do you know? I saw a couple of structures, I saw an X and a couple of leaners. Nothing really major, just kind of to let me know, hey, we're here. And I felt the energy from the woods as well. So I went back to bed and I felt better, but I didn't feel all that much better because I don't know. I was feeling a little bit sorry for myself. I admit it. I was trying to keep a good attitude, so I wasn't a jerk to the nurses and whatever. So this third night in, I get this dream, and this is when I get dreams, I'm never anybody else. I'm always myself. Well, the Sasquatch have given me 2 dreams where they've gifted me with the experience of being someone else. Once I got to be a Sasquatch because I asked them, hey, what does it feel like to be a Sasquatch? And they let me
Wow.
do a dream.
That's nice.
It was the most amazing experience, Brian. Can't even believe it. But anyway, the second time, I didn't ask for this dream, but it became really clear. I don't want to forget any of the elements, so I'm going to bring up what I wrote up as a kind of a journal entry that covers it. And I'm going to read it just because like I said, I don't want to miss anything.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It was, and actually, there we go. It was early morning and still dark outside. I was laying in bed and realized I was not me. I was a young man of about 14 years old. I lay there marveling at this turn of events and wondered where this dream was going to take me. In other words, this was at the very minimum a lucid dream. I was fully aware and cognizant of events. I was meant to remember this. Anyway, one of the thoughts that occurred to me was what am I going to do if I encounter another family member? I didn't know any names, nor would I recognize any of them if I saw them. That thought was quickly short-circuited when my dream attention was drawn to the cutest German Shepherd type puppy that I've ever seen, wiggling its way out from between my pillows. I was in like a double bed or a queen size. I laid there and let it just love on me, and I had this overwhelming sense of happiness and peace. Apparently, it was time to get up and get ready for school, I assume, so I hopped out of bed and went into the hall where I encountered my dream dad. We spoke pleasantly with one another. I was trying to hide my face from him so he wouldn't realize I was not his son. He said with surprise in his voice, "You are looking so much like a man." Those words, for some reason, conveyed a sense of how proud of me he was, and it felt really good even if the words didn't seem to apply to me. The scene abruptly changed. It was still dark and in the wee small hours of the morning, but I was now in a kind of laundry room because the washer and dryer were off to my left. There was a window that I could barely reach, but I could reach it and touch like the middle of the pane. It was above my head level. I noticed a Sasquatch looking down at me and instantly knew it was one of my clan. The degree of love, peace, and compassion he conveyed was immense. By the way, I might get teary. It was immense and overwhelming. I walked over to the window, and the Sass ducked his head down, I don't know why, but left his hand on the window pane. I reached up and put my hand on his, and our hands were palm to palm. The scene abruptly changed again. I was in the living room, I think, but it was somehow more like a forest. There was a fir or pine tree off to my left, reminiscent of a Christmas tree without ornaments. I was sitting on the ground, and that's when it happened. Dogs of all shapes, sizes, and ages came out of nowhere in front of me, and I couldn't see where they were coming from. As they passed, I was greeted with such effusive love that I marveled over it. Like I said earlier, I have always had an affinity for dogs, and they have an affinity for me. But this was on an entirely new level. As they passed, I went face to face with a number of them, and we rubbed and nuzzled cheeks. I just sat there in awe and wonder of this experience, because I was on all fours pointing towards the dogs, and they were walking by me. And it's like they were all paying respect and giving me their love as they did.
Wow.
And then I woke up, and the symbolism became clear to me when I woke up. The dogs were not dogs. They were clan members. My dream dad was not a dad. He was one of the male members of the clan that I think has been interacting with me since Talitha has pulled back. They were all checking in on me.
Yeah.
Upon that realization, I started to cry. All of the pent-up emotion from the surgery, the forced isolation from my family, and my inability to spend time with my clan came out. Anyway, I went from gentle crying to completely sobbing, both in gratefulness and release of the pent-up emotion. It literally was actually very cleansing.
Wow. So beautiful.
Yep.
So beautiful, man.
That was my last thing, actually.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
a lot more.
Yeah.
A lot
Go
more.
ahead.
That's a good place to end it, because you know, you end it
Well,
in the heart. You know, with
I'll tell you what, we're going to have you back, Kev, because I know you got lots more to talk about. But in wrapping up, do you want to give a kind of a summation of what you feel about the Sasquatch, and just give your plug or whatever?
I can certainly give my plug. So Sasquatch are amazing beings, and if you want to interact with them, it has to be on their terms. You have to have a good heart. I remember hearing that when I first started the interaction, or when they first started the interaction with me, and I went, what does that mean? You have to have respect for others, and you have to respect them. It's an amazing experience. You have to be open to the lessons that they are without fail going to teach you. You're going to have to really face some fears that you may not even know you have. That's happened to me a number of times. But it's an amazing experience. I would recommend it for everyone.
Absolutely. And with that beautiful, heartfelt.
What's your YouTube channel name?
I think it's just Kevin Royce.
Okay.
Because
I don't want to be a YouTube blogger or anything like that.
He doesn't want to be a superstar like me.
Oh, my YouTube channel is my name too, but you know, and I got all kind of stuff in there. So every kind of thing you can imagine.
I know. I've been to your channel. I think I'm even a subscriber.
Oh, great!
Wow,
that's 2 of them.
Well, you're brave. So in any event, let's wrap it up with that. I think it was good, and
I was touched.
It was really, really good. So I would like to say, on behalf of Port Cunningham and my honorable, astute, corrupt co-host, Frank Oliver Beans, we would like to thank Kevin Royce, aka Beef Wellington, for your time. And we love you, and we loved your stories.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciated it.
So thank you so much.
Your reputation is going to be forever be tainted by pork and beans.
Pork and beans, I know.
You know what? Honestly, though, Frankie baby, you know, I that's our goal. Is when we have a victim on, we try to like totally
stain them.
Yeah, but
stain.
You actually did okay. You know, I don't think we tarnished you too much, which is quite disappointing.
It's sad, really.
It's really sad. See you later, guys.
All right, bye now, guys. Have a good day.
I'm not like everybody else. I don't wanna get you.